Blessings, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm Dane, host of the Rock and Metal Guardian. Hope you're doing well wherever you may find yourselves. And welcome also to my second episode in my little mini-series this month, celebrating the 50th anniversary of the band Rush. And today's topic of choice is the phases or stages of Rush, a very brief history. So I'll be going through the discography with you and showing the stages in which the band goes through. So starting with the debut, of course, have to do it that way, is the self-titled Rush. And let's talk about the 4 hits on this album, or hits: Finding My Way, What You're Doing, In the Mood, and Working Man. Those were the classic hits that they would play live for a very short while up until a certain point, and then later on they wouldn't play some of these songs in their entirety. They would play them as part of a medley, especially In the Mood would be part of that medley. Anyway, but let's talk about all the tracks here for a minute. Need Some Love, I think, is a decent song. Is it stellar or great or a masterpiece? No, but I am quite fond of it. Take a Friend is a bit underrated. I do like that as well. Not as good as Need Some Love. Here Again, perhaps, I'm not going to call it a snoozer. I do like it, but it's my least favorite track on the album. What You're Doing, I think, is just fantastic. I like Finding My Way, What You're Doing. Those are perhaps the 2 heaviest songs on the album. In the Mood is catchy, and it's the only time that Rush has a typical, hey, we want to get lucky type song. Or I'm in the mood for love kind of thing, right? Before and After, some people have talked about how that's their least favorite song on the album. I think it's a moody piece, but I am quite fond of it. And then Working Man, I don't think it's the heaviest song if you compare it to Finding My Way and What You're Doing, but the guitar solo is the heaviest part of the whole album. So not a stellar debut, but it really got things started, right? Thanks to Donna Halper, right? I can't remember the name of the radio station she was DJ at, but because of her and so many others saw and recognized the talent of these 3 gentlemen, thank goodness, right? So wherever you are, Donna, thank you so much. Donna Halper, God bless you. All right, so this is we talk about stage. Sometimes this is lumped in with the next 3 albums because their first live album, All the World's a Stage, is covering a time period as they were known to do. Rush would usually release 4 studio albums and then a live album, and then that went by the wayside when they were touring a lot more than they were producing albums because the ratio was gone, right? Anyway, so this is a very good debut. It's not great, it's not excellent, it's not superb, excuse me, but I'm quite fond of it. I know some people don't listen to this much anymore, but I find myself listening to this more often than not, or I should say more often than other people who are stellar Rush fans as myself. Stellar, wrong word, or huge fans, or avid fans, I should say. Anyway, but I can't speak for everybody. But the people that I know who are Rush fans, don't quite listen to this compared to as much as I do. Yeah. Wonderful way to start your career. So as far as phases go, or stages of the band, they're in there, to quote John Rutsey, the late great John Rutsey, their Bad Company phase. That was the type of hard rock he wanted to do. It's very bluesy, right? Yardbirds meets Cream meets Led Zeppelin, and this is not my quote. This is a consensus of many people who early critiqued the album, right? So a lot of people thought, they called into Donna's radio station and said, hey, could you put the new Led Zeppelin album on, right? So no, not Led Zeppelin, Rush, he said, right, in the documentary. Anyway, so debut. So they're in their hard rock blues phase. And then you get this. And this, again, to quote the book from my previous video, this is where, to quote Geddy Lee from his bio, have the bio out again, that Geddy realized how visual an art form music can be. And like the book that I mentioned so many times, Will Romano talks about in his Moving Pictures book, how Geddy steps into the role of the characters that Neil creates, right? So this is where that begins. So this is moving away from that bluesy Bad Company, Led Zeppelin, Cream style. You still have some of that here. There's, in other words, it's hard rock, but because of this movement, because you've added the new guy, right, in Neil, jazzing things up, So you're moving away a bit, not totally, from the blues and the Cream and the Zeppelin, right? You're now finding your own sound, right? This is derivative, as Geddy Lee himself said in an interview, I think with Dan Rather. You can see that on YouTube. Okay, you still got some hard rock anthems in Anthem, Best I Can, Beneath, Between, and Behind, but then you get the progginess finally from By Tor and the Snow Dog, the fourth song, which really goes to show Neil means business and the rest of the band as well. We're right on board with all this stuff. Then you get the poppy commercial Fly By Night, which I'm still very fond of. In his bio, Geddy says this was not one of his favorite songs. That never really stuck with him. But I think he goes to say something about how he gets why the fans like it or something like this. I think that's what he says. Then you get Making Memories, which I think is an underrated track. It's an acoustic bit, and it has a folkiness to it. It has that acoustic folkiness to it of the late 60s, early 70s. It's just a marvel to me, I think. And then Rivendell was a song in high school that I would skip all the time. And I'm in my late 30s, and I'm listening to this album straight through, and I guess age, maturity, it finally clicked. It took that long for it to click, but anyway. And then the Fabulous in the end is that Light and Shade starts off slow, and then that guitar kicks in and it gets heavy. It's a hard rocker, just soaring close to heavy metal in tone, perhaps. Anyway, so again, often lumped in the same phase with the next two albums. I see this as I see perhaps these as chapters of a first book of Rush, really, but if you want to get down to the nitty-gritty, this is a phase in and of itself. This is beginning a new phase. This is a new chapter, a new phase, because it's got so many different flavors. This has so many different flavors than this. It's got some of the same flavors as this, but this is moving in a different direction in part because of By Tor and the Snow Dog, and in the end, to some degree. Okay, now, here's where things really shift into full-on prog. So this is the next phase, Caress of Steel, and this album is to Rush what Nursery Crime is to Genesis, because in that Genesis album you have two huge prog rock songs. Same things here. This is even huger, if huger is a word. Hello English Teacher, huge. This is even bigger because the epics on here are longer than what you get on Nursery Crime. You get Necromancer, which is 12 and a half, and you get Fountain of Lamneth, which takes up all of side 2. It's almost 20 minutes. And you have some shorter songs in Bastille Day, I Think I'm Going Bald, Lakeside Park. And you only have, when you have 5 songs on a full-blown LP, you know you're getting some prog, right? That's the joke, but it's kind of true. So this is where they really go full-blown prog, and the textures are so rich here. I know people pan this, but I love it. This is close to a masterpiece, if you ask me, and it's a prelude of what's to come in the next album, of course. We'll talk about that next. And you've got some medieval-sounding tones. You've got some Arabian-style tones coming from Alex. It's fabulous. It's dark and moody because of the Necromancer, and Fountain of Lamneth has a dark and moody and message. This album is very thematically rich, so much different from here, with the exception of perhaps By Tor and the Snow Dog would fit on this. And of course, By Tor makes an appearance on this album. So very different. So notice you go from Bad Company, hard rock, blues, Zeppelin, Cream, Yardbirds, to some of that same, but a little bit on the heavier side than this. There's some soft pallety stuff here, right? With Take a Friend and Before and After especially. And then you get some acoustic folky stuff with Making Memories and Rivendell. And this is where Rush is really fully aboard the prog train. And as you'll see, there's a couple albums coming soon that are called, or what I call, their English period. But this is not so much the English, not in league with those two albums, because it's more of, because of those medieval and some of the medieval, but especially as a Middle Eastern Arabian tones, this is more of a Genesis album, even though Genesis doesn't have, to my knowledge, that Middle Eastern or Arabian sound in the guitar tones of Steve Hackett or Rutherford. But I call it a Genesis in the sense that they're perhaps looking at Genesis at this point, maybe later, I don't know the whole timeline, but again, this is to Rush what Nursery Crime is to Genesis, because so much epic stuff going on here, if that makes sense. So that's what I mean by that. Next, of course, is we're not going to kowtow to the record company and give in for pop songs. Let's go down swinging if we have to. So here we have sci-fi prog now. So now we're getting into space rock, rock opera, side 1, and then you get Passage to Bangkok, which is a hard rocker. Something for Nothing, the closer, is a hard rocker, approaching heavy metal perhaps. And then you get a Twilight Zone, which is quirky, but then you got the Lessons. I'm sorry, you have Lessons, which is it's not a heavy song, but it's a lighter song. I'll leave it at that. And then you got the really tearful and sorrowful and sad, but quite compelling song, Tears, especially the strings at the end, which is quite moving. So space rock, art rock, taking some cues or hints from Pink Floyd, maybe, but so different from this. Yeah, they're both epic and have prog stuff, but this is sci-fi prog. This is more. The last song, Fountain of Lamneth, is very Odysseus-like, or the Odyssey-like, because the character that Getty steps into is very much like an Odysseus in many ways, which I've talked about before. And if you got Lord of the Rings kind of a feel with the Necromancer, of course, that's done intentionally. So we go from fantasy, sword and sorcery, Lord of the Rings, and looking for immortality, Ponce de Leon, to now we're in outer space. So, of course, these were, you could see this as one phase. They were in a package called Archives, but I used to see this as one phase, not anymore. This is a phase. This is a phase, all in and all of itself. This is a phase, and this is a phase, because this is, again, science fiction. You could lump these together, perhaps, but they're also different, so if that makes sense. Then we get the live album. To end this section of phases, if you will, or sector, since I have the sector box sets behind me. So you get All the World's a Stage, and what you're doing, the ending of this album with Working Man, Finding My Way, and then What You're Doing is so heavy. It's wonderful. You have a bridge version of 2112. I love this album. I know Getty says it's underproduced, but I love it. I like the way it ends with Getty going, "Whoo, what a show," or something like that. And then the doors close, right, or something like that. The pictures are in here. Fabulous. Yeah, I wish I still had this on vinyl. Anyway, back in the day. So ending an era, or rather ending a period full of phases, so to speak. Next is what I call their English phase or their Genesis phase, because this is really when they're being influenced by Genesis, but yet not sounding like Genesis, if that makes sense, but sounding English. And I've said this before. The Photograph, even, because they're in Wales recording this in the next album, and you can't get any more than that English-looking band of brothers there, especially Alex. Looks like he's in a riding jacket, and, they're in the country. You have these lovely photos here. And, of course, that pairs up nicely with this, which I'll talk about in a minute. These are companion albums, and they have, this is one phase. So, Pharaoh to Kings and Hemispheres is one specific phase. It's the English phase or the Genesis phase. Maybe an homage to Tull as well, Jethro Tull, because of the pastoral. But Genesis is known for its pastoral musings as well. And speaking of pastoral, you get the opening to Pharaoh to Kings, but then it gets heavy in spots, which is fabulous. The drums are just so heavy. Xanadu is a bit pastoral before you get into the swirlings of the Moog and the synthesizer and all that. Excuse me. You got kind of a quasi-hard rocker in Cinderella Man, closer to the hearts that light and shade. Madrigal is medieval and Renaissance and English, right? And then Cygnus X1, we're back to the science fiction. So this is all over the place, but in a good way. This is kind of a Led Zeppelin 4-ish because of the album cover, which I've talked about before, where we're talking about moving away from, agrarian kingdoms and kings and demons to a more upgraded society with high-rise buildings, and that's on the back end of Led Zeppelin 4, the high-rise building, and then the wall coming down the home with the agrarian gentleman in the photograph, right? So very similar. And so it's very Led Zeppelin-y in the sense that this album is very uneven, and yet it works. And that doesn't happen very often because, again, you have hard rock, you have light and shade, you have pastoral, you have English poetry in the Renaissance/medieval madrigal, and then you have science fiction. And then romanticism with Xanadu, the British romanticist, Coleridge, right? The homage to his poem Xanadu, or Kubla Khan, rather, which has Xanadu in it, and the Thunderdome, sorry, the Pleasure Dome, okay, and Kubla Khan. So anyway, one of my favorite albums. So Hemispheres, recorded in the same place in Wales, in the countryside, thank goodness, and you get the continuation of Cygnus X1 Book 2, so like this and 2112, you get some more science fiction rock. So you could make the argument that this, and this, because there's some sci-fi rock are one phase. I would buy into that. So science fiction, Greek mythology, Cygnus X1, Book 2. The science fiction turns into going back to Greek ancient times, right? Because of the time traveling through the black hole or wormhole, same difference. And then side 2, where things change. You get circumstances, quasi-hard rock tune. You get the trees, so we're back to full-blown prog allegory. And then you get to full-blown prog/jazz, jazz fusion with La Via Strangiato. All right, so that ends another phase. Because then we get to the La Studio phase. They go into La Studio in Toronto. And what an album. So different from what we just saw. And yet it's so wonderful. You have a more commercial progginess. So it's the La Studio phase, the commercial progginess, that oxymoron, right? You have the Spirit of Radio, which so many fans, including myself, love. It's not my favorite song, but I am quite fond of it. And then we get an even better song after that with Free Will, which is my favorite song on this album. It's one of my top 25, 30 songs of all time. And then more proggy goodness in Jacob's Ladder, my second favorite song on the album. It's just a beautiful arrangement. Whatever these guys were thinking, wow. I get chills right now just thinking about it. And then we get Entre Nous and Different Strings, which are companion songs in a way. There's a handful or small handful of songs in Rush where Rush gets really close to doing a full-blown love song. These are two of them. They're very beautiful. I wanted a little bit more at the end of both of these. They're so short, 4:36 and 3:48 especially. And then we get Natural Science, which is made up of part of it is made up of what was going to be a Neil Peart's Gawain piece that he introduced the band in. The other two guys, from what I understand from the bio, still reading it here, weren't feeling it. And so Neil was like, okay, I'm adoptable. I'm part of a band. I can't be, selfish and always get what I want. That's what's great about this band. That's one of the things that makes Rush great. I should have mentioned that in my video yesterday or the day before, right? But anyway, so you get Natural Science instead, which is my third favorite song on this album. So Free Will, then Jacob's Ladder, then Natural Science. Wow, it's just it's an odyssey of the microcosmic world of organisms, right? But it's an allegory for our own lives as well. And if we talk about the album cover for a minute, if you do the math, there's 5, 6, maybe even 7 or 8 different puns that refer to the album title, Permanent Waves. I won't go through all of them with you. I won't go through any of them with you, except the obvious one is the red wave of the music wave going across. There are some obvious ones here. One of them is very Freudian, and I'll leave it at that. And the clue to tell you which one is the Freudian one is go to the album by the Rolling Stones called It's Only Rock and Roll, and one of the songs on the album tells you the name of that song. It's one of the last songs on It's Only Rock and Roll, gives you a hint of what the wave I'm referring to here. That's very Freudian. All right, so the companion to that, Rush Moving Pictures. So this is very similar to this, and this is much better. This is great. This is even greater. Tom Sawyer, that opening iconic swirl from the Moog or the synthesizer or the sample, right, is phenomenal. It's very iconic in the way that the opening swirl and sample from 2112 is, but different. Then you get and again, this is where all culminates in Geddy, Neil, and Alex understanding one more time how visual and art form music can be. All right, let me say that again. Geddy came to understand how visual and art form music can be. It culminates in this, as I said, because Geddy, like so many songs that are already in the stack that I've showed you already, didn't go over which ones are, visual, but Geddy steps into the role of a modern day Tom Sawyer, sort of. He definitely steps into the role of the protagonist in Red Barchetta driving the car. He speaks for Neil, who's really the speaker since he wrote the lyrics to Limelight about the pros and cons of being famous, right? The modern day version of A Tale of Two Cities in the camera eye, London versus New York, right? Then you have Witch Hunt, and then you have Vital Signs. So some of what's here is Geddy stepping into that role. Some of it is more metaphorical, stepping into the road, speaking for us as the human condition kind of thing. I won't go into all that philosophical stuff, but you have to read Will Romano's book for that. But I do have a video on that. One of my first videos. Shameless plug. Anyway, so again, this is the culmination of the understanding about how music can be a visual art, making movies in your mind and in your head from the music and the lyrics and the combination thereof. So, great album. And this is the end of that phase, that commercial progginess. Because then, last album with Terry Brown, we get even more commercial and most of the progginess goes away. Now we're talking about reggae and shorter songs. Let's see, the longest song on here is Digital Man, which is 6 minutes and 20 seconds, and then The Weapon, it's 3 seconds longer than that, 6 minutes and 23 seconds. Everything else is under 5 or 6 minutes. Subdivisions, my favorite song on here. Subdivisions. Because I could relate to it at the time. What it is not to be one of the cool kids, right? Because your hair is too long, or you like to read, or you actually study, that kind of thing, right? The Analog Kid, I'm quite fond of. Chemistry, I think, is a underrated, beautiful piece. Digital Man, it took me a while to warm up to that. The Weapon as well. I do the lyrics of The Weapon are so important to our lives. New World Man was the first. I can't even do it now, but very reggae-ish, right? There's a bit of reggae through some of these songs. Losing It, I like the lyrics, and I do appreciate the music now, but it's still my least favorite song on the album. Ben Mink is wonderful, however. Countdown would be a better song, as I said before, if they would lose the NASA guy. We're approaching. Get rid of that. But the synthesizers and the music is exquisite with the dun 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 dun. I'm not doing it right, but the way the song ends, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. So this album took me a while to warm up to. I hate the album cover. I know Rush likes to do their funny puns, but this is not. I wish they'd just chosen something different. So again, this is the beginning of what I call their police phase because of this. And this. and this. And when I was in high school, when these came out, I never said this. I kept it to myself. I said, man, why are they... And of course, there's an interview where, way back, where there's a video where they're smoking in the studio, and Neil's the one smoking, and he's talking about the Gawain piece very briefly, and how they were listening to Ultravox and listening to the Police, and it's one thing if you listen to Genesis and Jethro Tull, and it inspires like Farewell to Kings and Hemispheres, etc., but you don't sound like Jethro Tull. You don't sound like Genesis, but you hear the influence instead. The problem with these albums, these three albums, is that you're listening to Ultravox and you're listening to the Police, but you're sounding too much like them. And so, lo and behold, decades and decades later, I'm hearing people. This is Martin Popoff has said this is where Rush entered their Police phase. And then I'm watching another YouTube video about a year ago, and the video is they're doing maybe 6 months ago. They're doing a overview of this album, a retrospective. It's one of those panel shows. There's 4 or 5 guys, and one of the guys in the panel who owns a record store that I buy from online. He says this is where Rush entered their Police phase. I don't like it, and I thought, hey, I'm not the only one who thinks that. So cool. But anyway, so this warmed up to me. This warmed up to me eventually too, and I consider everything from the debut up to and including this as Rush's best run, including those 2 live albums that they showed you. Even though the production is not as good as this, hello, Terry Brown. Man, if Terry had done this one, wow. Anyway, so Distant Early Warning, After Image, Red Sector A, The Enemy Within, and The Body Electric. 5 good songs, near very good to start off the album. Kid Gloves, I don't like at all. I don't even like the guitar solo. Red Lenses, I thought at first was kind of fun and quirky. Now I can't listen to it. I don't need a OSU song, like something you would play to the troops during the 40s or 50s. Something that you would play to the troops while Bob Hope's still around. And no offense to the military, because I have friends and family in the military, or did, but this is out of place to me. It goes with some of the themes maybe, but it's just not Rush. If I want to go to a parade during Mardi Gras and watch the military, God bless them, then I would want to hear something like that. That's the time and place, not rock and roll. Next is the lovely and fabulous Between the Wheels. Anyway, so I do quite like this album a bunch. Like I said, it grew on me. And then these next 2 I don't have in the remastered form because I lost a bunch of my Rush CDs to Ida, the hurricane, and I never replaced what I'm about to show you in this form, but I still have the Sector box set. These are the jumbo sizes. So next you get Power Windows. So this is the final of the Police trilogy, as I call it. You get the Big Money. I'm not a big fan. Grand Designs is okay. Manhattan Project, not a fan. Marathon's okay. Territories is okay. I love Middletown Dreams. So great song, great message, very thematically rich. Emotion Detector's okay. Mystic Rhythms is just fabulous. Wow. A heartful, emotive type song. I love it. And then we get to Hold Your Fire. I like the pun. You got the guy juggling the fire on insert. Not in this version, I don't believe. But boy, these I used to like Force 10, Time Stand Still, Open Secrets. I'm quite fond of. Open Secrets is to this album what Middletown Dreams is to Power Windows. Second Nature does nothing for me, nor Prime Mover. Lock and Key's okay. Mission does next to nothing for me. And then Turn the Page, Tai Shan, and High Water, I think, are dreadful. So this begins a phase of, I'm not sure what to call, doesn't sound enough like the Police. It's just, you have the opening 2 songs, Force 10 and Time Stand, so very commercial. So this is where you're going to a very commercial and a bland phase for me personally. I get that they're experimenting, but it's way too far removed from the stack of the 12 that I have here. I failed to mention one because I've left it out. Got to talk about After Moving Pictures we get Exit Stage Left. So I screwed up my time frame here, or my timeline. But anyway, so this is, hallmarking or celebrating the milestone of an end of an era in the band, right? A phase, if you will, of the 4 albums after All the World's a Stage. Again, Farewell to Kings, Hemispheres, Permanent Waves, and Moving Pictures. The only thing missing on here is A Farewell to Kings. Anyway, so this has a personal connection with me. There was just something. This album does not get old for me. Is it perfect? No. The production and the phasing out of songs in between songs and pulling them up again on the bringing them up level. But it's just, it shouldn't be that. It should be one big flow through, right? Anyway, and the best version of La Via I have ever heard in my life on here. So I remember getting this for the first time, and my mom taking me to get it. I've never been so excited for a piece of music in my life, and that's why this is so precious to me, part of my DNA. All right, so I failed to mention that. So let's get back to the chronology. Next, we get Presto. I'd like to call it better than Hold Your Fire, and it is, but there's still not much for me to like, where I'm returning to it. If I had to choose between two, this one, but the songs I only listen to all the time are Show Don't Tell and Available Light. So this, I would count this as part of the same phase as what I do this. So this is another trilogy. This is just commercial blandness with some really cool highlights, few and far between. So again, Show Don't Tell and Available Light are the bookends that I really like. I think these are wonderful. And then back to this, just Open Secrets is the only thing that really moves my motor on this. So that's 4 songs on 2 albums, and then 7 out of 3 because we talk about this. Dreamline is fabulous. Bravado is fabulous. Face Up and Where's My Thing could do without. The Big Wheel, Heresy, no. Ghost of a Chance is fabulous. So there's the 3. Neurotica's all right. You Bet Your Life was a disappointing. So that phase, I guess we call that, for me personally, the disappointing phase. Then we get, as Alex has said, a return to heaviness. This is where we got heavy again, folks. Sort of. I like it. It's much better. Well, no, I take that back. The 3 songs I like on here, Dreamline, Bravado, and Ghost of a Chance, are better than any of the things on here. Now, what I do like about this is one of my favorite songs on here. Double Agent, Where Would You Rather Be? I can relate to that. That's very moving and emotional. It's got some heavy spots, sort of. I like Leave That Thing Alone. I love Cold Fire. Those are my 3 favorite songs. And I like the opening tracks, Animate, Stick It Out, and Cut to the Chase. Nobody's Hero, I don't listen to much anymore. And everything else, could throw away. Everyday Glory bugs me. I just don't like it. So anyway, I can't call this a grunge period. You could call this a grunge album if you want. I don't hear the grunge here. Because you have guitar solos. Isn't part of being grunge no guitar solos? I'm being pedantic. I'm playful and silly. But anyway, so this is what it is. So this is a different phase. This is trying to get back some of the magic and the heaviness. Shirley comes aboard as producer, denying Alex his reverb. No, you can't have reverb, right, from the documentary. He's a funny guy. But yeah, I appreciate the attempt, but still a different phase. So we go from the Police phase to the ho-hum phase with 4 songs I like, right? And then we get to the grunge phase, which is a one and done. Because then we get this. And I like the first 2 songs, Test for Echo and Driven, and then the rest of it, boy, does nothing for me. When I first heard Test for Echo, when I was working at the record store in Baton Rouge in the mall, and we put this on, and my friend and I that I worked with looked at it, and we were like, whoa, this is a lot like the Rush we used to know and love. And then the rest of it's very pop and not melancholy, it's mediocre. Some of it's below mediocre. The Virtuality song is okay, and there's a moment where Getty's singing like I'm not doing it right, of course, but it sounds something like 21 something on 2112, like a brief moment of that. So trying to recapture some of that perhaps. But anyway, not much to like here. So, and then I missed a. So we have to go back in time again, folks. Sorry. So after the police phase, if you will, plus Hold Your Fire, we get this snooze fest. Yeah, it ends with Closer to the Heart, Red Sector A, The Rhythm Method, Witch Hunt, Mystic Rhythms. I'm sorry, this is not a snooze fest. The album cover is a snooze fest. Yeah, so I changed. Sorry, I misspoke. So Subdivisions, you got Subdivisions, Distant Early Warning, Mystic Rhythms, Witch Hunt, The Rhythm Method, Red Sector A, and Closer to the Heart. So you have 7 songs. The rest are the police type stuff. Big Money, Marathon, Turn the Page, give or take Police, Hold Your Fire. I'm not going to read the rest of that. But sorry, folks. This is a show of hands. Horrible album cover. And back's even worse. So I like the photos, though. Liner notes. But anyway, so this was hallmarking the Police phase +1, end of that era, if you will. Those group of 4, right? And then after the ones that I just showed you, Test for Echo, Roll the Bones, etc., we get this wonderful live CD. I'm quite fond of this. You get a return to them playing 2112 in its entirety, not an abridged version. So it's great. Begins with Dreamline. And then Limelight, you have the first time they have Animate as a live song, and Bravado and Driven. Show Don't Tell is live. All this is live. And then you hate the bonus disc, but that's something we can talk about in another video, perhaps. Ends with Tom Sawyer and YYZ. This is a wonderful live album. All right, back to our timeline. This is the comeback album for me, not Counterparts. It's Vapor Trails, with the exception of Out of the Cradle, which is, Out of the Cradle is to this album what the Everyday Glory is to this. They're dreadful, if you ask me. But this is a comeback album because you have 13 songs, and I think all 12 that come before Out of the Cradle are either very good or excellent. Nothing less than very good. I love One Little Victory to get the heavy drums right. You also have the remixed version. I still like this version better. Anyway, so One Little Victory I love. Ceiling Unlimited, I was like, wow. Ghost Rider is sad because of Neil losing his wife and his daughter, but it's a wonderful emotive piece. Peaceable Kingdom is heavy, light, and shade. The Stars Look Down reminds me of the Birds a little bit. How It is underrated. The title track is fabulous. Secret Touch is even more fabulous. Earthshine gives me goosebumps. Sweet Miracle, oh wow, gives me goosebumps too. And then Nocturne is okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Nocturne is good. And then Freeze Part 4 of Fear. Sometimes it's catchy. I like it. It's good. All right. And then we get this. And the first time I heard dun 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 dun, I'm thinking Hemispheres. Dun 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 dun. Oh wow, still love the song. So yeah, now we're back. Okay, now we're back. Right, it's great. 1-2 punch, right? Armor and Swords, great. Walk Into Angels is great. I love the Larger Bowl. Spendthrift, a little falling off, but I still like it. The Main Monkey Business is a nice instrumental. The Way the Wind Blows, thumbs up. Hope and Faithless are slow pieces, but wow. Bravest Faced is kind of a snoozer. Good News First, kind of boring. I love Malignant Narcissism, and We Hold On's okay. This is a very good album. Another comeback album. And then, of course, finally, Rush's only full-blown concept album, their last album. And I'd have to do the math, but if I'm not mistaken, this might be their only double studio album. If you talk about the fact, if you look at this as a vinyl record, it's 2 vinyl records. I may be wrong, but either way, they finally did a double. They did a double album, physical graffiti kind of thing. Anyway, Caravan I love, BU2B, Clockwork Angels is okay, The Anarchist I like, Carnies is okay, I love Halo Effect, 7 Cities of Gold is good, Wreckers is good, Headlong Flight is the gem on this album, BU2B 2 is good, it's a short piece, Wish Them Well's hokey, I don't like it, and The Garden I think is quite good, and so that's the last phase, folks. The true comeback phase, right? Or the true comeback phase. Well, let me just put these 3 up, right? And if you don't know, if you read the time on here, it's 21:12. All right, an homage to that. So, if we talk about finally some live stuff. Some more live stuff. Because as I said earlier, near the beginning of the video, they would normally put out, 3 times they did this, they put out 4 albums and a live album, 4 albums and a live album, and one more time. And then after that, they're just putting live albums because it's not keeping up. They don't have as many studio albums to go with live albums. So you have to get Clockwork Orange Tour. Clockwork Orange. I do that every time. Clockwork Angels Tour. You must get Rush in Rio. You must get the Time Machine Tour live in Cleveland. Homage back to Donna. Thank you, Donna. Snakes and Arrows live. And this is probably the best of the must-have live stuff, is Moving Pictures Deluxe Edition with the 2 CD set live in YYZ. All right, so there's your brief history rundown by way of the discography to kind of show you what their phases are. Thank you so much for watching. Take care now. Bye.